Going live, fam. Going live. Hotep, everyone. We are back on the Philippe Matthews Show live. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are around the world. Well, we have an amazing panel of adepts tonight. It's actually members and adepts of the Shock Metaphysics Comedic Wisdom School tonight. Our elders are going to weigh in on this movie, movement, and phenomenon called Black Panther. And of course, back with us again is the wonderful, the magnificent Èzili Dantò. Yeah. Welcome, my sister, my queen.
Thank you.
Dr. David Imhotep. Minister Imhotep Al-Kabalan. How did I do?
Very good.
All right, because I know Kaba's watching, and that's his son, and he doesn't want to. I don't want to get hurt by him. And then none other than, of course, Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. Welcome back, my esteemed friend.
Hotep, to my family, and to you, Brother Philippe. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to this particular program.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. So this is about Black Panther. This is about the Black Panther movement, and I thought it would be wrong not to have a conversation with a brother who knows intimately about the Black Panthers, and we can go into that history, and then we could talk about how and why Stan Lee decided to come out with a Black superhero after the emergence of the Black Panthers and the impact that the Black Panthers made. You and I have had many conversations, Professor Kaba, of you sharing with me the impact that the Black Panthers had with you. Let's start with you and kind of set the tone of, well, particularly for the young ones that are going to be watching, who were the Black Panthers?
The Black Panther Party, my relationship with the elders, and one of the things that I always try to be very clear about is to discuss my place within the party itself. You are not going to see me with a gun in my hand. You're not going to see me storming into the assembly. I was 12 going on 13 when the Black Panther Party formed itself. But what becomes very important for us to understand is everything that preceded it, because we tend to look at things episodically. Before you look at the Black Panther Party, you have to look at the Deacons for Defense out of Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes.
Natchez, Mississippi.
Yes. Yes.
And what these brothers had said and what these brothers had done.
There you go.
And it becomes very important to understand the history of the resistance as it relates to this. You also have to reach out to Brother Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael, who was organizing the African-American community in Mississippi. And what he decided to do was, for so many of our people who may not have been literate, who may not have been able to read, but could be able to visually understand and had a great deal of sense and was extremely intelligent, but as it relates to decoding the English language, they had a bit of a challenge. So what he did, he wanted to develop a political party specifically for the African American community in Mississippi that he hoped would travel across the world. So he said, well, the donkey, everybody know a donkey was a Democrat and everybody knew that an elephant was a Republican. But he said they may not have been able to read Democrat or Republican, but the African community understood what a Black Panther looked like. So he developed the Black Panther Party. That's why it's called Black Panther Party. It was a political system. And out of this concept came the term Black Power. And this came out of Mississippi. So when you're looking at this movement, you can't lose Mississippi or the Deacons of Defense. Now, the other thing is, the time I've spent in Natchez, Mississippi, and the time that I've spent in Jackson, Mississippi, I was informed that there were family members that lived in Mississippi that had family in Oakland, California, and that these family members had traveled to Oakland. Now, keep that in mind. But the other thing that Bobby Seale has told me is that the Black Panther Party, its very origin, its very beginnings, because he had a master's in electrical engineering and he was a stand-up comedian. I'm talking about Bobby Seale now.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
And he was telling me that there was an elder brother used to stand on the corner in Oakland and teach Black history. And Bobby Seale said that in all of his years of learning, he never learned anything that this elder brother was teaching on the corner. So he got together with another younger brother by the name of Huey P. Newton and said, we need to bring this into the college. So what Bobby Seale was attempting to demonstrate was that the very seed of the Black Panther Party was born out of the desire to have a Black studies, African studies program for the community. The benefits that I had from the Panther Party came out of education. First words I ever learned in Kiswahili came from my attendance at the Black Panther meetings. They had the feeding program. They had a medical program. They had a dental program. They had a legal program. In fact, the Black Panther Party was so powerful in so many of the communities. When you go to people like Bunchy Carter in Los Angeles and you go to Fred Hampton in Chicago, they were becoming independent hubs and cells of a very powerful movement moving forward, that the community, if they had disputes, they used to have the Black Panther Party be the ones that resolved the issues before they would take the issue to what they considered to be the oppressor's court system. This was the kind of trust that the community had in these younger brothers and sisters of the community. And out of this came fear from the police department.
Yes, sir.
And out of this came the attacks.
Yes.
And out of this came young people saying, look, because you know, they used to follow the police around with, you know, at the time you had a reel-to-reel camera, you know, it wasn't like it is today. They used to film the police and how they conducted themselves in the community. So that if police ran up on somebody who was going to do something to a brother or a sister, the Black Panther Party members were there to film the event.
That's right.
So that became very antagonistic between the police department and the Black Panther Party itself. And so that started the more self-defense aspect of it, where they said, this ain't going to go down like this.
Right.
You take me, I'm going to take you. You know, it's almost like Desalegn, you know, when he said, you kill 500 of us, we going to kill 500 of you. The truest sense of the Bible, eye for eye and tooth for tooth.
Right.
So that my emergence within the Black Panther Party was feeling a great love, honor, and respect with brothers and sisters with great integrity and honor. And they had quite an impact on my life as a young brother, 12 and 13, 14 growing up. And that's really why I turned out to be the person in my career that I became, because I said I wanted to do for other young brothers and sisters what was done for me. And so the Black Panther Party for me has always been a very positive. And I know it's very exotic, and I know it's very interesting to deal with the more self-defense aspect of them, which I understand that was there. But the origins of them was to uplift our community. In fact, the musician that was a band leader, Leonard Bernstein, he used to have fundraisers for the Black Panther Party.
I remember reading that. Yes.
There were many people in Hollywood that donated sums of money for what the Black Panther Party was doing for the Black community.
Very true. Yeah.
And then, you know, but that's my conception. But the other piece is that as I've gotten deeper into the Panther Party, I've come to realize that the panther is a very sacred animal. I won't go too deep into it right now because of the nature of the conversation. But the other piece is that when you look at a book called The Physiologist, Physiologus, it tells you the role that the panther played. It's going to go into Wakanda. Because if you remember in Wakanda, they call the panther Bast or Bastet.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that's very important to understand who Bastet is, because in Bubastis, they had a temple dedicated to Bast, who is the sister of Heru. She is the feminine form of resurrection of the spirit, which is the panther. So I've often told people, as it relates to the panther and that the sacredness of that animal, You know, that is very important to understand that it is very appropriate for the panther to represent us, because the panther is the feminine principle of resurrection on the earth. And so the panther is a sacred animal. And long before the Kemites wore the leopard skin, the inner Africans wore the panther skin as a sign of royalty, because there is no such thing as a black leopard. A panther is black. A leopard is an albinoid panther, because a panther has spots. But because the hair is black and the spots are black, you don't see it. But as the hair began to turn brown, then the spots appeared, and that's why you see the spots on a leopard. In fact, the last name of every cat is Pantera. The lion is called Leo Pantera. The jaguar is Onca Pantera. So it's very appropriate that panther be a symbol for us as a people, not just to mention the feminine principle, but the resurrection on our earth.
Absolutely amazing. Minister Imhotep, you just sent me a text. I don't know if this is something that can be, if anybody can see this. There we go. Focus a little bit there, Mr. Microphone. There we go. So you just sent that to me, and it says, before Europeans taught you that black cats were bad luck, she was a goddess in ancient Kemet or Egypt by the name of Bastet. Black cats were known for keeping evil spirits away, and I think we need to we need them back in our life. Minister Imhotep, walk us through your your interpretation of the Black Panthers, the Black Panther Party and the movement, and the Black Panther itself.
Okay, I'm going to turn 60 next week.
Yay! That's right. So
and
happy, brother.
when the Panthers were out, I was only 10.
Okay.
They had their rallies up the street, 2 blocks from my house.
You were in Oakland, is that right?
At a park called Defirmary Park, which was renamed Bobby Hutton Park after a youth who was killed by the police when he was 16. Seemed like I always hung out with people that were older than me. So I was hanging out with this guy that actually I didn't realize it when it was happening, but he actually lived around the corner from me. But he was telling this story of it was a group of people. He'd come upon a group of people that was on like 14th and Grove, which later became Martin Luther King Boulevard. And he said there was a white policeman and he was just slapping this sister. And it was a crowd of black people standing there not doing anything. And this young skinny kid wearing like a maxi coat, because that's what we were wearing back then, came up and said, "Leave her alone." And the cop said, "What are you gonna do, little nigger?" And the kid opened up his coat and he had a shotgun in his coat.
Nice.
And the police left.
Yes, sir.
And my friend said the next time he saw that skinny kid, he was on the back of the Black Panther newspaper sitting in a caftan, one of those chairs. Those chairs. And so that's kind of like the folklore of Huey. If it wasn't for the Black Panthers, we wouldn't have WIC, because their free breakfast program is the prototype for WIC. That's a government institution. It was the Black Panthers that introduced acupuncture to the black community.
That's correct.
So, and people don't realize Huey was Dr. Huey Newton. Huey had gotten his doctorate in sociology, and when Huey was assassinated, I mean, he was assassinated by our own people. He was assassinated by a youth who wanted to move up in the Black guerrilla family in the prison system here in Oakland. I mean, in California. But I went to Huey's funeral. It was at Allen Temple Baptist Church, which is largest Baptist church in Oakland. You know, 1100 at the 8 o'clock service, 1200 at the 11 o'clock service. You know, it's that kind of church, and a very dynamic minister. Actually, Huey was a member of that church, and the pastor of that church is this guy named great speaker, orator, and organizer and minister, the Reverend Dr. J. Alfred Smith. And man, when he got through preaching, you know, and his wind up, he says, you all said Huey, free Huey, you know, where Huey is free. You know, he had like he was speaking from a large, a tall rostrum. And back then we had a green bar computer paper. He said, I did a search on Huey, and then he let the green bar just flow down. You know, and what he was saying, he said, you can't graduate from major universities without reading something about Huey P. Newton. You know, he was showing the, you know, but I mean, if you go back and listen now to Bobby Seale, he's saying that, okay, we organized this, but Huey got on drugs. You know, and I was trying to, you know, help him, but, you know, he was too far gone, and, you know, we had an argument, you know, and so, I mean, sometimes it's not only things that happen to us from outside, but we can do it to ourselves.
Well, when we talk about, you know, we've done shows about racial battle fatigue and the effects of that and what it does to create stress. Can you imagine the stress that man was under?
Sure.
And so, you know, I look at my family and I look at whatever maladaptive behaviors and addictions that might befall them, and I understand the epigenetics, the axiology of how and why. You know, here's the rub. Nobody goes up to their mother and father and say, hey, mom, dad, when I grow up, I want to become an alcoholic. It's not a goal, right? It's something that happens to you as a result of stress and pressure that you can't not handle.
Sure.
That is overwhelming for you. And so, you know, I look at my family, both those that have become ancestors and those that are going through it right now, that I understand what you are going and growing through, and the stress of race-based traumatic stress, what it does to you mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And sometimes you have to anesthetize and inoculate just to be able to function and wake up in the morning. So didn't mean to interrupt you on that, but I wanted to intercede on that as we move forward. Minister Imhotep, did you have more to offer us in that story, and how Black Panther impacted you?
You know, I found something that was, you know, I kind of alluded to it the last time we talked about this, and it was from the Indigenous Wisdom Keeper, and probably you all on the panel have heard of this brother. He's like 91 now. He's in South Africa. His name is Credo Mutwa. And I had read something a long time ago, and I just found it just before I called you. And I'd like to read it. It's just a paragraph, if I can just take it, if I could just take a minute.
Absolutely.
Now, this is Wakanda to me. Check out what he said. This is Credo Mutwa. He says, before human beings were created on this planet, there existed a very wise race of people known as the Imani Ukula. These people had come from the constellation known to white people as Orion, and they had inhabited our Earth for thousands and thousands of years. And that before they had left our Earth to return once more to the sacred spider constellation, they made a great evacuation under the earth, beneath the Missouri Mountains, the mountain of the moon, and deep in the bowels of Mother Earth, the I'm having a hard time with this Imani Ukala built a city of copper buildings, a city with a wall of silver around it, a city built at the huge mountain, of pure crystal, the mountain of knowledge, the mountain from which all knowledge on earth comes, and a mountain to which all knowledge on earth ultimately returns. This old woman told me that her grandmother had told her this story while she was still a virgin of some 15 years or so, and undergoing initiation into the mysteries of the culture of the Bahu people. The old woman went on to tell me that many generations ago, there came to the land of the Bahu a group of yellow-skinned men who wore colorful robes and strange, brightly colored hats. These men, she said, had come in search of the great city of knowledge, which they had heard many, many years ago stands in the earth under the mountains of the moon, the Missouri Mountains. And, you know, it goes on. I don't want to belabor that. I'll send that to the panel and you all, and you can post it with this story. But, you know, I heard that like 18 years ago. And, you know, it's just something that just stayed with me. But I had got it confused. I thought it was in the Congo, but it's really under the Missouri mountain range. And when I watch movies and I get things in my head and I can't get them out. I'm always asking, where is God in this? I'm always looking at something through the spectacles of Ethiopia. So, I mean, and sometimes we see things and we think we're seeing them for the first time. You know, there have been many movies with this kind of the same theme as the Black Panther in this respect. There's a movie called King Solomon's Mine. And in is Deborah Carr, Richard Granger, some other, you know, and so Deborah Carr, a British woman, comes to Africa, is trying to find her husband, and she asks this guy to lead this expedition. They, without going into too much in the story, they get together a group of Africans carrying their stuff, and the Africans get to a point, and they say, we're not going to go beyond this point. You know, that this sign says don't go, you know, don't go here, you know. And then about that time, they hook up with this guy who's like, I don't know if he's 7 feet tall, but he's very tall. And he's a Watusi. The hairstyle that he has is like the Ramses II statue, and that's in Job's book where he's comparing them. And so he's carrying their stuff, and he takes them to where his tribe is, where King Solomon is supposed to have hidden his treasure. And when he gets there, they find out he's really the prince, and he takes off some of his clothes, and he has these keloid scars that reveals that he's a prince, and he's doing the same thing that Killmonger is doing in the Black Panther. And he ends up fighting this guy, and they have the short spears, kind of the same way that Killmonger is using, and he defeats the guy who's sitting on the throne. You know, and then of course the Europeans pillaged the gold and diamonds that were there, you know, which is just part of the story.
Which is part of what they do. That's why we call them colonizers.
So Bassett, you know, this mythological place, because we haven't found it yet under the Missouri mountain range. This is all coming back to our culture. And if you notice, when they made Indiana Jones, they didn't find the Ark of Covenant in Jerusalem. It was in Africa.
Fantastic.
I got a lot to say, but I'm going to close my mouth and let the panel proceed.
No, that's fine. Èzili, you and I have had conversations offline as we were preparing for our conversations on Black Panther, and you shared with me about the Forbidden Cities, the Forbidden City. Give us your understanding, and if you could connect the dots between Black Panther and what you feel and about it as it relates to the Forbidden City.
Sure, sure. Thank you for asking me. Honor and respect to everyone. You know, what I do is what I call the non-colonial narrative. So I spent a lot of my career dealing with the colonizers. So it's very interesting to me when Suri says, "Oh, colonizer is here." So I think, you know, what's the purpose of me being here doing this? Because I have spoken about the Black Panther immediately after I saw it, and talked about what signs and symbols that we see there. So, and the thing is about transmitting skills. So if I do anything in the world, part of it is to transmit to the generation who is watching and who follows the work of the Èzili Network, that colonialism has a template, and that template doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what the Eurasians value. So when I saw Wakanda, I knew right away that this wasn't an ancestral place of mine, because my ancestors don't have those values, even though the cover of Wakanda was African. The signs and symbols, and of course they use Basque and Sekhmet and Èzili, the divine warrior mother, which is the archetype that I was named after. So all that is very familiar that I saw in the movie. The warrior women, we wouldn't have had a revolution in Haiti without the warrior women. And many of them came from Angola, the space of Queen Nzinga. We still in Haiti have a laku, where they worship Queen Nzinga, and bow down to her people from the Congo and Angola. So we don't have feminism in our culture in the way that it's been taught. A woman does what a woman can do. So these warriors were warriors. They weren't female warriors. They were warriors. So when I saw some of the themes in Wakanda, those are the themes that we constantly teach so that our people can have the skills to counter colonialism. Colonialism is international. Colonialism is domestic. With regards to the Black Panther, I spent a lot of time. I have a album. One is male, one is female. In that album that I have, it says the global war against the Black men. And then I have another one that says the global war against Black women. And the cover for that global war against Black women is Assata Shakur. So, and she was associated with the Black Panther Party. So was Mutulu Shakur, the stepfather of so that's my generation coming to Tupac Shakur. Mm-hmm. And the template was the same COINTELPRO template that destroyed and infiltrated the Black Panther Party, the civil rights movement, and helped kill our heroes, is what colonialism is and what colonialism does. Colonialism exists within a way, like we call it bourgeois freedom, bourgeois democracy, where there is a kernel where on the inside you have Tara, you have this beautiful plantation place where the people are supposed to be about beauty and wealth. And then on the outside you have slavery. So that's what when I saw Wakanda, that's what I said. I said, this is the tourism in the Caribbean. This is in Darien, Connecticut. This is where they live with their gated walls. This is the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City was built around 1406 to 1420 by Chinese. I think it's the Ming Dynasty. So we're talking about at the time when the Europeans, didn't have this. You have China having this amazing city, and it could be Wakanda. They had all the comforts in the world, and we're talking about this was constructed and finished in 1420. So imagine what the world looked like in 1420. You had the Americas, and I'm very happy that Professor Kaba talked about where that name came from, because I'm always talking about the fact that we are original to the planet. And we go back, our history has not been told, because we don't go back 100,000 years, we go back millions of years, which resonated with me when I saw the movie. And it started out with the asteroid, as Brother Al-Kabulan talked about. We are the star people also. And Credo Mutwar, I'm so glad he's always talking about him, because there's so few of us that know Credo Mutwar. He talks about what it looked like, what the universe looked like before the Chichiruri, before what Dr. Ani would call the Yorugu, before this sort of soulless individual that feeds on our pain and masturbates on it, as a matter of fact, and then seeds it to us and then feeds itself with it. So like a vampire. That particular template goes throughout European history, where they have these gated spaces. So the Forbidden City, like I said, is a space. It will remind you of Wakanda, because Wakanda is this technologically advanced, superior space in some place in East Africa that is the center of the movie. Black Panther rules as king, for those that haven't seen it. And then we're essentially, he is the hero of the movie, but everyone has seen, the reaction of the world, essentially, because this movie is going almost to $1 billion as I speak. So the reaction of the world is something I want to talk about a little bit, and I want to talk about colonialism. So in terms of template, that Forbidden City of 1420, now remember, Christopher Columbus came in 1492. We know that Grenada fell in 1492. We know there was a transition in the world happening. So in that Forbidden City, what you have is the aristocracy of the Chinese, and gold. It's like Versailles, beautiful thrones. They're it's like Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud. And then outside, you have this amazing poverty. You have, and that's the world we're living in, and that is the colonial world that we live in. So immediately when I saw Wakanda, I know the template, because I counter that template. I understand what the CIA is. I mean, for those who don't know, I run something called the Free Haiti Movement. I have spent my entire life as an attorney going against colonialism and the work of the CIA. So as I represent the first democratically elected president, for instance, in Haiti, and he was taken down twice by the CIA. So when in that space of Wakanda, we're supposed to believe and clap that this white character gets shot trying to save Nakia, who was one of the warriors and the girlfriend of the king, the Chadwick Boseman character. So they bring him to this hidden city. And I went back actually, and I saw the movie that came before this one. And there's 2 points I want to make about that. So the first time this African hidden space brings anybody in, it's not a young child who's being taken down, who's being raped by an enslaver. It's a CIA agent. We know what CIA did to the COINTELPRO, the Herbert Hoover. We know, in my experience, I'm a woman who's had 6 assassination attempts. So if I sit here as a survivor of the CIA. So I'm watching this man be the ally of the king of Wakanda. Now, it's a very important template because it's the CIA allies itself with coons in Africa to take down revolutions, because that's what they do. That's what they did in Haiti. But they cover it all up in this most beautiful cover. And the cover is legitimate African history. It covers a lot of beats. Number one, when they talk about Basque and Sekhmet, Sekhmet is the lioness-headed female warrior mother. It is another version of Èzili Dantò. In my research, I found that the comic Basque is the goddess of Wakanda. And to go through into the ancestral realm, you have to go go through Basque. So they're really picking what we were before patriarchy, before this Chichayuri came, as Credo Mutwar calls this new energy. And Credo Mutwar is very, very important, even though the person that interviews him is a European with his own agenda. So I can't really recommend Credo Mutwar unless I explain to you that you must look at David Icke and look at him in terms of he is pushing his own agenda. They are looking for what they say that, they came into the, I don't know, with their, with the, what do you call it? The Abrahamic religions that, I don't know, 6,000 to 12,000 years ago. That's how they got here. But we're talking about millions of years. And we have in Haiti, as I was telling Dr. David Imhotep, and I'm always sending this out, what we have in Haiti alone changes world history. So we have a representation, evidence that there were sentient beings on that territory from 35 to 100 million years ago. And this is there's written evidence. I won't go into all of that, but so when I saw the movie, I thought about bourgeois democracy, which is a bourgeois freedom, which is a term that we use at the Haitian Lawyers Leadership that I lead at the Free Haiti Movement. What it means is that the value of the Eurasian, starting from the Forbidden City, because like I said, the Forbidden City was a place where the aristocracy of China lived amongst glitter and gold and comfort. And then they put a moat. They actually built waterways all around it, so the regular people could never come in. And their people lived on the outside in poverty, and just like we were talking about, let's think about Africa. So that was 1420, and it has not changed for them. And so that's what I thought when I saw Wakanda.
And we see that playing out too, not just in Africa, but we see that in all parts of the world. Oakland, my hometown, Chicago. You find a ghetto or the hood, as they say, people who have been left behind and forgotten. We understand the mindset of Killmonger. Interestingly enough, I had an interview with John Perkins, who used to work for the CIA, and he still has one of the most prolific best-selling books called The Hitman's
The Economic Hitman.
The Economic Hitman. And I remember seeing first and coming to understand John Perkins. There was a documentary called The End of Poverty that I saw maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago. And he told this crazy story about how the CIA, which is, you know, what he had to do. He would go into these quote unquote developing countries and sell or force, if you will, the presidents or the leaders of that country basically into what we know as an American debt. It's basically an infrastructure that they put in place that that country can never pay or repay because it doesn't have the money. And they put the country in debt. And as a result, it's like setting up miniature cities, hidden cities, if you will, because if the president of that country does not agree with this deal, John Perkins says, well, the first thing that we do is we send in what's known as the jackals. And the jackals go in and they create a coup. So they try to disrupt and undermine and usurp the government so they can move the president out of power and out of position. And he talked about this, that they did this successfully. I think it was, I want to say Taiwan, but he goes into
it was Panama.
Panama, thank you, Panama. And then he says, and if that doesn't work, if that does not work, then we assassinate the president. And this is the work of our American government. This is the work of the CIA, and we saw that with Gaddafi. And what happens when when a country does not follow the American protocol of what they call our foreign policy, and this is what we're kind of talking about here. Dr. David Imhotep, your thoughts before we move on. Your thoughts on Black Panther Party, Wakanda.
Well, you asked me to bring in the historic perspective, since that's what I do, and I will do just that. First of all, I would say thank you for the phenomenal speakers that came before me, and I feel like a midget amongst them. It's phenomenal. I mean, and yourself too. So thank you for having us, and thank you for the phenomenal oratory we've just heard. This story, it comes from a comic book. It begins with a comic book, Marvel Comics, and when I heard about the Black Panther movie, I thought at first it was going to be about the real Black Panthers, you know, right. So, but when I found out it was about a comic book character, I was a little let down. So I was up and then down, and then when I heard about the movie, and my cousin called me and said, "This is the most magnificent movie I've ever seen." I said, "I don't know about that." I went to see the movie. I've seen it twice now, and that's not enough. I'm going to read the DVD and study it in depth, because there are so many different things that you have to see and have to study. You cannot take it all in one view. This story, it takes place in the Congo. Okay, it's what time period? Well, it wasn't the time period where the Anu and Twa were in the Africa. Way back, way back. Some people say the very first Homo sapiens, the small people, the diminutive Twa and Anu. They were. It looks like because of the airplanes and the spaceships, kind of like looking like a Star Wars craft, and the trains that flew through the air without train tracks. That it took place in the late 1900s or early 2000s, 2010, 2000, whatever. So it was a new type city. It was a cloaked city. This is another thing that I've never seen before. They had a cloaked city so that a flying object that would go across the city would see farmlands and whatnot, and would not want to come and invade them because of what they had. Even though they had vibranium, it was low key. So that was a phenomenal concept. And then you have the T'Challa, there's a hero, and of course you have Killmonger, who was supposedly the bad guy in the movie, but we see that his heart was in the right place. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of brothers out there who say he was the real hero of the movie. And we can go back and forth with that or whatever. But the thing that I really enjoyed that when I read that the writer Coates, he actually put the spirit of the ancient Ethiopian army as Wakanda was picked from, because these Ethiopians defeated they were the Italian army. They defeated the Italian army in 1896, way back when they had the Italian army had all of the modern weapons, everything, and the brothers in Ethiopia, had the regular weapons that they've used for thousands of years, but they still whipped them with all the technology. Mm. So, and then this is one of the reasons I wore this jacket. That is the Tuskegee Airmen, who were the modern Wakandan peoples, and the Ethiopians and whatever. We have been great since the beginning. And the sister corrected me. Oh my goodness, we had a conversation. Thank you. My first book back in about the first Americans. My original research showed that we had been in the Americas, the Africans, had been Americans since 51,000 years ago. And then a couple of years later, I found that evidence showed that we were in California 130,000 years ago. Mm. And then later, just a few weeks ago, I found that we were in Mexico 250 to 400,000 years ago. Mm. I thought it was phenomenal. But here, this sister comes to me and tells me that she has evidence that Black folks have been in Haiti for millions of years. And I have no doubt that that could possibly be true. Wow. So all of these things together show that we have a phenomenal history, and we must get this to our children. Mm-hmm. Fun to express this to our friends and family and brothers and sisters and have the big glow. But the major thing we have to do for survival on this planet is to take them out of that horrible schoolroom, the type that we all have been through when we were young. Learning about George Washington, learning about how the slaves were the first Africans, walking around with grass skirts on, bones in their noses, eating people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This type of thing does a mind blowing for our children. What we have to do is get this real history, the kings of the planet, from the universe. We brought it all here. We did everything before anyone else did anything, because we were here millions, like she said, millions of years before anyone else. So this has to get done in the schools, but before that happens, it will have to be done at home in little study groups. This is when people ask me, well Doc, how do we start? How can we get this in schools? Well, I say, first, you have to read the history and you have to master it yourself. So when you go out, you can say things in correct context and section, okay? Then you form little study groups, and you have a book that you read a month. And everyone comes together and they read the book. And I want to tell you, I'm a member of ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. And we get together and we have those study groups, and we come together and we talk about different parts of each book. And the beauty of it, the magic of it, is when you read one paragraph, someone else reads the same paragraph, and you both find something different about it. Mm-hmm. The book lights up in your hands. It becomes electric. and you see that this is not the only way I look at this. I must look at it another way, and you build it together, and it has a phenomenal perspective arrives. So after the study groups, you want to push this into after school programs. And then once the teachers and the students start reading and become better students because of their reading, I'll tell you what, I'm a PhD, okay? And I only read one book in high school. Biography of Malcolm X. I get Cliff Notes for everything else because I hated history. The way they taught history was all about white supremacy. I hated it. I still don't like it. And it was about dates, naked dates for you to remember. What kind of teaching is that? Okay? So when I first found my first book on ancient African history, it blew my mind, and it's still been blown to today when I read other different things. This is what we must get to our children, who are our future, and we must do it today, not yesterday. We want to start today. So that is what I want to leave with the folks out there who are watching this together today.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
that formula to rebuild our minds, our psyches, and go where we're supposed to go and do what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely. And you know, for the family, Dr. David Imhotep is the first person, first human to get a doctorate in ancient African history. Ancient African history. He's the first to get his doctorate. And if I'm not mistaken, one of your one of the doctors that you had to sit before with your dissertation was Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Is that right? Yeah. So
Leonard Jeffries.
You come from good stock, is what we're trying to say. That being said, Dr. Imhotep, I'm gonna come over to you, Professor Kaba. And because you're an educator, and you worked in all levels of education, and I wanted to ask the question in terms of being able to reteach our history and the effects, if you will, of successful colonization. You know, we've only been fighting this fight here on this continent for 500 years. They've only been successful for a very short period of time in terms of our entire history. Now, they have done a very good job at trying to erase or keep our history from us and successfully create intergenerational ignorance of self-colonization, where we literally turn against ourselves and against our own brethren. I want you to talk to us about what are the effects of successful colonization. You and I have done shows on coons and what that means. And it's, you know, yeah, it's a big, bad, gloomy word that airs our dirty laundry, but the people who have done us, some of the people who have done us the most harm, depending upon your story, look like you and I. We know what the colonizers have done and what they are capable of doing. But my gosh, how successful has that colonization been of self when we look at what economics does for the, you know, either positive economics or negative economics? What does it do to us when we turn against ourselves and colonization becomes successful? Professor Kabahia Wathakamane.
You know, one of the things in being exposed to folk that conduct themselves that way, one of the things I've come to realize about people who we have labels, you know, we have a lot of different labels for people. Uncle Tom, which I don't really believe is a proper term. Uncle Tom was a hero. It's Sambo I keep my eye on.
Yes. 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 Yes.
You know, I mean, when you look at the stories that are told, you understand that Uncle Tom was the brother that was in the big house that would come down to the quarters of his people and tell them what's going on up there. Sambo was the one in the quarters of the people that would go up and tell the people in the big house what was going on. So that, you know, our terminology and what has happened my interpretation of them and my exposure to them is that they are the ones that are most affected by self-hatred.
Mm.
And they are living in a very serious pit. And that they have been the ones that have been most impacted by this principality of evil. But we as a people, we who are moving towards this next level of understanding, we just have to understand them, keep our eye on them, be able to protect ourselves from them and those who they represent. But we have to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things about Wakanda, I thought about something that brilliant scholar by the name of Nana Before Amankwatia II,
Yes.
who is also known as Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III.
Yes.
He once said something to me that I never forgot. In fact, I had to go to the dictionary to look the word up. And he used the word ubiquitous.
Mm.
And the context that he used it, he said that figurative language is ubiquitous to African thought. And when he said that, I needed to know what ubiquitous meant in order to understand what was the cornerstone to the neuronal connections of the African brain, the holistic brain. And ubiquitous means it's all up in there. It's like asking the question, what part of butter isn't milk?
Mm.
Figurative language, something that we teach in schools, in the language arts. It includes metaphor, simile, flashback, foreshadow, symbols. And Wakanda, when I thought about it, when I saw Wakanda, I thought of the Asarian drama. The metaphor of the Asarian drama.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
As our sister attorney Èzili speaks of the template. See, Europeans have got nothing. They developed nothing. The only thing that Europeans created was the patent office. Because they stole everybody else's ideas and put their name on it. But they themselves have not come up with anything that is new as it relates to the world arena.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the Asarian drama, the idea of Wakanda, the metaphor, the simile of this city that Credo Mutwa speaks about. And he develops an idea of this civilization. When you think of the city of Eredo in Nigeria, that was up and running 1000 AD, 400 square miles. Its diameter is 100 miles. It has ramparts that are 75 feet tall that protect the entire city. When you look at the Giza Plateau, you understand that that was a pyramid city. There were over 80 pyramids in that city, not just the 6 that we see, or the 9 if you go to Saqqara. But this was a walled-in city. So that when you understand the potential of African people,
yes,
one of the things we have to do is change the way we think.
yes,
We have to reconnect our neurons. Because for us to consider that African people, as our sister Èzili is telling us, were civilized millions of years ago. When someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that not just we go back millions of years, but the fact we know scientifically that if life, which I do believe exists outside of our Earth, they would also have to be a melanated people because of the scientific principles of cosmic melanin.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We became Eurasian because we made the mistake of leaving the tropical climate and we lost the relationship of the sun to our organic being.
Mm-hmm.
The same way if you took a plant and put it in a cold climate, it would die or it would turn albinoid. This is just science. This isn't personal. And so Wakanda represents the city that has existed in the past. Not just that, but many cities in the past. Cities that rose and fell over thousands of years. But for someone to hear that, if you've been indoctrinated and you've been controlled by the mind of the colonizer,
yes.
What you look at me like you think I'm crazy. You tell me, you know something, brother? You out of your cotton picking mind. To which I would say, yeah, I am out of my cotton picking mind. The problem is you're in a cotton picking mind.
Ooh.
We have got to change the scenario of who we are as a people and what we have contributed to our world. Long before Yurugu existed, the Baturi, we have all sorts of names. Long before that, we had civilizations that rose and fell. So that by the time we got into what we call Egyptian history, we were on a decline.
That's right.
After millions of years.
That's right.
That's right.
And the Old Kingdom really was the last attempt to preserve this greatness.
Yeah.
Because every other dynasty, every other kingdom, the Middle Kingdom tried to bring back the Old Kingdom. The New Kingdom tried to bring back the Old Kingdom. The Shabaka Stone literally rewrote an Old Kingdom document called the Memphite Text. Everybody was trying to, let's just call it the good old days. They were trying to go back to the good old days.
Right.
And from that point on, that section of Kemet or Egypt, the Nubians called it the Star because they were attacked from all different sides. And that is when the Eurasian, the northern climate people are going to enter into Africa, into the kingdom, into the promised land, as the prodigal son in their story talks about. And so Wakanda, to me, is like the carvings on the wall of Edfu, the city of Heru, that talks about this King Horus or Heru that comes and takes over this area and brings his blacksmiths with him that bring in civilization. It's the story of the development of Hikupata, where this king is going to come in up out of Kustal, up out of Edfu, and is going to come into this area, and his hydraulic systems and his engineers are going to redivert the waters of Hapi. They're going to create an elbow in the Nile River because geometrically and geographically, and because they studied the heavens, they found a center point upon which they built their theocratic capital called Hikupata, that the Greeks call Egupatos, that we today call Egypt. Egypt is the same word as Aegyptos. Aegyptos comes from Hikupata, which means the spirit of Ptah. Ptah being the hill that was created in order to redivert the waters of Hapi, in order to create this theocratic capital, so that for the last time in history, they'd be able to create this civilization that we today call the Old Kingdom.
Teach.
There is no Egyptian civilization. It's Kushite. Egypt is what we get from Manetho, who was the Greek African, who divided the dynastic kingdoms up for the Greeks and the Romans. But Egypt is an illusion. Egypt doesn't exist. It's Kushite. That's simple.
That's right.
And that the people who built the pyramids, there were already structures there. The Sphinx was already there.
Yes.
The civilizations that our elder brother Mutua is talking about is very real for us as a people, but it's very difficult for people because you're living in a world that's been contaminated by a person that just is a corrupt individual. And we've, for the most part, for now, we're doing the best that we can. But their time, even if we did nothing, their time is up.
We've had several conversations on that. Yes.
Even if we just put our hands down and did nothing, nature is in the process of taking them out.
That's absolutely correct.
In 1,000 years, the next time we celebrate a millennium, this world is going to be a very, very different place.
Yes, it will.
And Wakanda offers us a metaphor, a simile. Besides all of the other things, and of course we know Disney. Okay, we know Marvel. You're gonna have Stan Lee. That's in the casino, gonna take the money and say, "I'll hold on to that." That's symbolic for what they did when black folk won the world,
right?
And then was distracted. What did they do? I'll hold on to that, which was the wealth of the world. The CIA represents far more than just an organization that infiltrates. They represent the exact neural construction of the white supremacist mind. The CIA just happens to be an organization that is morphed off of that thought. You want the attention of people of European descent? Sit on a subway train and pull out a book. And see if they're not going to get next to you and try to figure out what you read.
That's right.
They're always trying to get into your business because they're trying to figure you out. But we have to know this going into the game that's being played right now. And we've got to be able to do what's necessary. So Wakanda is a simile. It's a metaphor. It's a flashback. It's a foreshadow. It's a symbol.
Message.
It's a message. And when we get to the point where we'll embrace this concept and understand this idea, to those brothers and sisters who are agents or whatever name we want to call them, there's so many names. I try not to be judgmental because I don't see them as people. I see them as a behavior. I don't hate the hater. I hate the game. But I keep my eye on the hater.
That's right.
Because there's things that we're going to have to do. We ain't got there yet.
Well, you just did a piece on Harriet. You just did a piece on Harriet Tubman, and you know why Harriet Tubman had that shotgun.
That's just to turn me on. That's just to walk the earth with a pistol in one hand and a holy book in another. Now that turns me on. Very democratic, because she gave you a choice. That's the feminine principle. And that is why every revolution is grounded in the feminine principle. Because mothers know what to do to protect their family. And there are certain things that we're going to have to do as we move forward in understanding this concept. But Wakanda is a metaphor. You know, they are working right now on something called maglev. It means magnetic levitation. Pretty soon cars are going to be magnetically attached to cords in the air. They're working on this right now. The very thing you saw in Wakanda, people are working on right now.
An entire train system. Yeah. Everything is going to be, we're moving away from coal. We're moving away from fossil fuel. In the interim, we got some wind power going on. We may touch on some water power, but solar energy is the wealth of the future.
That's right.
And isn't it wonderful that where the sun shines the brightest, the people are the blackest? Yes.
Hello.
It's like the Creator gave us wealth. There will be no air. There will be no AIRE at the end of our name. There will be no millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire, zillionaire. Because the sun is abundant in its research and resource and all that it gives us in light and heat energy. It's abundant. So there is no capacity for the wealth that we'll have. So that when you look at the vibranium to me represents solar power. To me, symbolically, it wasn't a meteor that came from outer space. It was the sunlight. Just go look at Akhenaten. When our brother Imhotep Alkebulan showed you that picture of Bast. What you also see behind Bast is the sun with hands that are coming down.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rays of light. And the right hand symbolically is what gives. The left hand receives. So whenever you see a right hand in Kemetic legacy, it means that that entity is giving you something.
Mm-hmm.
When you see a left hand, it means that it's receiving something. So when you see Bast, and you see the sun, and you see those hands that are rays that are coming down, what that symbolically is telling you is that the light and heat energy is giving energy and power to Bast, and the power that Bast emanates also gives back that power to the sun. It's a reciprocal relationship. Just as the sun gives us life, proper living gives the sun life.
Mm-hmm. You know what I wish? I wish I could program Alexa to be Kaba. Everybody needs a Kaba Hiawatha Kamene on their dresser in the morning to just give them whatever it is that they need to, you know, rather than say, Alexa, can you, no, I mean, Kaba, can you tell us about ancient Egypt? And then Kaba would come on and give us, because everybody needs a Kaba Hiawatha Kamene in their life. I'm just telling you right now, fam, I just love this brother. Èzili Dantò, successful colonization. We've talked about this before. You have been somewhat conservative on the topic, but there was a time when we had a conversation offline where you kind of let loose. I want to talk to you about this in depth, because one of the problems that I am seeing is how economics is used by the European to successfully colonize and subdue and subvert and segregate our Black communities by creating the haves and the have-nots. And that is what you were describing earlier when you saw, and I remember seeing a review somewhere where the young lady was talking about how Wakanda can represent the bourgeoisie, like the Forbidden City, the Hidden City, and everyone around is impoverished. But we can see that in our own community. Talk to us about successful colonization, the mindset of that, and what you call colonized celebrities.
Sure. And I have to say this, right? As the only female sitting here, I did not give birth to the Eurasian. I will not claim them whatsoever. For me, this is what we have to come to as a people. I used to say that there is one human race, but I have fought Yorugu straight up, and there is no human in what they do. And Haiti, you know, back in the day, it was gun, germs, and steel. And it's still guns, germs, and steel. These oligarchs, these 1%, these non-humans have no empathy for the pain that they bring. So for us, you know, all of this, when I talk about, you know, when I'm sitting down anywhere, I am talking about our liberation as a people. And what is it that we can get out of this movie? Now, this movie is important because it's using African culture. What I'm about, you know, I'm a master Haitian dancer. I'm someone who am African, have represented what I am. And so I see it. I see the beautiful thing that we are on stage, on this space. And I want folks to understand that there is a template, and we've already talked about the let's say the tourism in Jamaica, and then you have Trench Town where everyone is just dying, or the ghetto, and then all around it there's, you know, beautiful mansions and so those are templates. There are other templates like within us, within who we are. In Haitian Vodun, we call it Rada en Petro, the energy of war, and the energy of reconciliation. So we can talk about Malcolm and Martin. We can talk about Dessalines and Toussaint. We can talk about Garvey and Booker T. It's always something that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there. It's going to be there. And white supremacy is going to kill both. But yet, they will kill, co-opt both, but in different ways. So we have to come to a point where we're looking at it from above, because we've had all this experience. The colonial template, beyond the lack of empathy of these non-humans, is that today we have something called neo-colonialism. This is when they put a black face to a white agenda. So in the past, we've had colonialism, which is the straight exploitation of a country and putting a white savior there as governor general. They occupy your country. So in Haiti, for instance, we were occupied for 19 years, and they had just taken over everything, the U.S. Marines. And throughout the world, up until the 1960s decolonization movement, Africa was colonized. But today, we have something called neocolonialism, where Africa is a space where there's 54 nations, and they have a black face to a white agenda. And if you happen to be not a black face to a white agenda, they will send the CIA, the DEA, all the three-letter words, and the World Bank and the IMF to come and destroy you, whether it's the economic hitman or whether it's creating death squad like Boko Haram or ISIS. They create these death squads. And they create these death squads in a particular way that can be studied and that our people can know, so that we don't have to keep constantly, every generation, reliving the same thing, because we know what skills we need to destroy it. So, for instance, in the Wakanda, if you look at the situation between the arch enemy in that movie, which was the Michael B. Jordan character, which I refuse to call Killmonger, because my whole entire career has been about representing the black male who has been dehumanized in order so that, who has been vilified so that they can then destroy him.
Yeah.
So, and so that's been what I've done my whole career. So in Haiti and Ivory Coast, if there is a cultural nationalist, someone who says, this land is my land, my ancestors had it, so I think the resources should belong to the people. Then they will bring in certain, and it's a template. They will. So if you look at Michael B. Jordan character who played Ndjaka, and then you look at the Claw character, which was the other villain. And I'm only talking about what I saw in the four squares of the movie, not the comic book. All right. Michael B. Jordan could have been a double informant. And the reason I say that, because we analyze it all the time, because we have to. That's how I survive. So you look at the Michael B. Jordan character, he was a former CIA, and so was the Claw character. And what does the CIA do to these people? We know there's programs called the MK Ultra, where they mind control folks. And I have no doubt that at some point, the next installment of Black Panther, they might say, they might bring him back and say he was mind controlled. Now, I know in Haiti and the Ivory Coast, where I have worked, that they start training the informants very early on to be agents of influence. They would find a very intelligent Black person, and they will start nurturing that person from high school to college, and then to a place like Ta-Nehisi Coates. And that person is the face today of what they call neoliberal or the Black imperialist. The reason I bring him not up is because we have to understand how white supremacy uses a Black face for white agenda. And I have a play when I first started putting together the textures of what I was feeling, because as a people we see whole and then we have to break it down. I saw whole a lot of different things, and I put it into something called the Red, Black, and Moonlight. And one of my lines in Red, Black, and Moonlight is that I did not know how I could be co-opted by those more schooled in the patterns and privilege of domination than I could ever be. And so we don't know how we're going to be co-opted. And I found myself in Haiti in 1994 as well read as I was. But what I really was bringing was European development to my people. So I found myself co-opted. So there, you can be educated in that system and not understand what you're representing. You could become an agent of influence because you work within your own space. You become well known in that space, not knowing that someone is using that influence to destroy your people. I have been in that situation. So I tell folks that when you look at someone, and I want to look at it because we always have to look at the context. So in this movie, the way that white supremacy works is that your attention is currency. So it's not just money that's currency. So because your attention is currency, because we create through our attention and through what we put our attention to, they are always putting in front of us different things in order to lead us to a particular space. So we know when we look at this movie, the first thing I saw, being what I do all the time, is the fratricide between the two brothers, right? Fratricide is very entertaining for white supremacy. I was in an audience of mostly white folks when I saw, and I looked around and they clapped at the end because it was two Black men fighting. Subconsciously, this is very, if it had been Claw, that had been the arch villain. He was a villain, but he wasn't the arch villain. So he wasn't the arch villain, was the Black man. And the Black man was at some point given some humanity, but then he was overboard. And so when you dehumanize, then you can destroy, which is what they did to the Black Panthers, right?
Right.
As Professor
So
Kaba was,
they created that thug narrative again.
That thug narrative, okay? So as Professor Kaba Kamini was saying, 75% of the Black Panthers were women. 75% were women. But what we have as a picture is the Black males that they used to overview, like you know, they use folks who might have gotten in trouble. This is all you hear about the Black Panthers. You know, those things that Professor Kaba was talking about, the lunch school program, Matulu's detox program for heroin addicts. You don't really hear about those things. You really have to get them from studying. I say all that because in 66, when the Black Panther Party was put together, throughout that, you know, there was a book called The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Really?
When I look at the N'Jaka character, that's what I think about. Okay, so imagine if he was a double agent, right? If I was writing this fantasy, that's what it would be. Okay, so let's look at it. Claw, we are told, had stolen the vibranium. Okay, but he did not know, apparently, that next to him, the guy who was helping him was actually half Wakandian. Like, he didn't know this guy had a different agenda. So we're talking about two agendas here, and this is what's really important about the espionage. And so to use these examples. So, because they are right in front of us. So Ta-Nehisi Coates, I'll give you an example of how white supremacy works. They will give you a, this is the thing about, because I spend all day long trying to take down the United Nations. Because the United Nations, just like, let's say, Black culture, the United Nations is being used as a cover in the front for whites to push white supremacy. So in the Wakanda movie, you have Black culture being used as a front to push the conformist Negro, which is what T'Challa was. And he's actually and I really respect him. And if he watches this, Chadwick Boseman, I want to tell you, I am so proud of you, because he came out and he said, listen, the story that was told here through N'Jaka is my story. I am actually the enemy because I've had a vibranium spoon in my mouth. I understand that power is white privilege. So he felt it as a Black man, and he said it. And I'm very proud of you, because he has a body of work, very respectful. He played 42, the story of Jackie Robinson. He, all of these stories. So he's not a character like exactly Thurgood Marshall, you see. And so he wanted really, I mean, that is a stunning thing for this young man to say, is that even though I have a multi-million-dollar deal to play the first superhero comic in a billion-dollar movie, I want you all to know that I'm the enemy. I'm the enemy. Wow. And he said it. And I am so proud of him, because he's basically saying, I'm not going to play because we associate, even though this is a fantasy, we must understand our minds don't quite understand the conscious and the subconscious, because there's a message subconsciously being given to us by the type of actors who play these roles. These are people we respect. These are people who have a lineage of good choices. So we associate with them. And in that way, we would associate good things and struggle and so on with this person. But white supremacy has an agenda. Part of its agenda he was using Ta-Nehisi Coates. Like some of you must remember, just recently there was a feud between Ta-Nehisi Coates and Cornel West. And in that feud, Ta-Nehisi Coates said, he wrote a book, something about when we were in power, the 8 years or something. It's about the Obama years. And he elevates Obama to the point of saying that he is our manhood. He was our Malcolm X. Now, that is such heresy.
Yes.
That is so horrific.
Yes.
But so I give you the background for one reason. Ta-Nehisi Coates was brought in as a consultant to Wakanda. And so when some of the interviews are happening, you see him there. But he also won the MacArthur Genius Award. This is another way that white supremacy elevates a particular mindset within our community. And we have to understand all of this, because it's the nice Negro, the accomplished Negro, the one we look up to, and then those are the ones that are going to be used to put together a particular message. Part of Ta-Nehisi Coates' message, yes, is what we call the LGBT agenda. That's what he did for the comic book. It wasn't translated into the movie, but I am going to bet, I mean, a lot, that the next movie, because viscerally we all associate with the Michael B. Jordan character. They will give him something we don't associate with as African. You all can figure it out. But that's where they're going to go, because they need to continually bring our attention and then destroy that attention and get into our souls. And that's why they have these deep cover sleeper agents, these program people, these agent provocateur, the confusion. All of this stuff is intended because, like I said, so in terms of colonial celebrityism, some of them are willing participants, some of them are not conscious of how they're being used.
Mm-hmm.
But they are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to deal with them in my own neighborhoods, whether it was in America or in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
They would bring in Wyclef Jean. They would bring in Sean Penn. They would bring in all of these Hollywood folks to give a face that people always associate with good things or heroic acts. So association is really what we're talking about. So the association right now is this. The most deadly association of Wakanda is that Africans are in a way like the European, where we feel no empathy for the people around us. That's a deadly association.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we're not like that. If I walk into a room and someone is sick,
Yes.
I feel it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
We're not like that. I'm very conscious of it. So to live within a city where people are being raped and destroyed, and there's death squads, and we wouldn't be there. That is what the Black collaborators do. We call them the opportunists. And the Haitian template was to get rid of the Black opportunists, their evil forces, as I always say, and then their Mandela, which is the imperialists, the colonizers. That's the template of the Haitian Revolution. So the most obvious one I can see, like I said, Obama was a face to white supremacy.
Yes.
And he has put us back maybe 100 years. Because before that, we had no one could really say that there was a Black man who was at the highest level of world power that did the same thing as a white man. But now we could say that about Obama. And I resent the fact that he has put us in that category. I mean, this is the person who put Hillary Clinton in charge of Haiti. And then, $13 billion is gone. 300,000 people is dead. And we don't know where any of that money has gone, but they have given us cholera. And like Professor Kaba says, it's the sun that actually saves Haitians from what cholera could have done to destroy us. So I really appreciate the connection to vibranium. So the certain Black folks are used to give a face to a particular message that white supremacy wants to put out. In this particular Wakanda movie, they're basically harping on Black on Black crime, as they do.
Mm-hmm.
They're harping on the CIA is a good guy, a good ally.
Mm-hmm.
And they're harping on charity. At the end is the resolution. And so instead of a revolution, give them charity. I live this all day long in Haiti, in Africa, right? They come in and they take all your resources and then they say, give you charity. And I always say, it is the oppressed that by liberating themselves in their own way, and it can't be the way that the Christians and it can't be non-violent. And I'm not talking about hurting someone through weapons, but change is going to be violent because violence is psychological also. So, for instance, the reason this movie did not, white people did not feel bad because it didn't psychologically bring them to see themselves. We talked about the colonizers, but it was funny. It wasn't Claw with N'Jaka and T'Challa looking at Claw as the enemy. If that had been, we would have been looking outward together.
Wow.
which is what I teach. In order for us to fight this energy, this vibration, this mindset, this plantation mindset that's gone nuclear, we must look outwards together, both the Rada and Petro, so both the Malcolm and Martin, both, we have to look outwards together, but they didn't look outward together. They were like here.
Fascinating. Fantastic, Èzili. That is amazing. Moving in the same direction, I got a comment on my YouTube channel, I think, from one of our past Black Panther reviews, and the question was, and I'm going to bring this to you, Minister Imhotep. The question was from one of our viewers: why hasn't Africans from the continent supported and accepted us, the African American? When we talk about successful colonization, the question stands and deserves to be looked at. Your thoughts and opinion on that as it relates to, and I'm gonna come back to you, Dr. Imhotep, and then Professor Kaba to speak on that.
Can I just address something? I was taking some notes, beautiful information that is coming across. But one of the things I wanted to get out before this program ended is that Jesus the Christ, one of his original names was Joshua Pendera, which is Yeshua, son of the Black Panther. You all know that, right? I mean, that's one of the things in the movie. They dropped little hints on things, and I have to reiterate. Okay, some of it I'm still 10 years old waiting for a black hero. So when I watch that movie, I'd see a lot of good in it, and so I pick up things like, okay, when they're in the museum, they showed the Benin mask. And the Benin mask is a mask that the Europeans stole from Africa that refused. I thought I heard something, a little while ago that they might be returning it, but have kept, they have a lot of our treasures in their museum. So they put that in the movie. I went back, Imhotep, I went back yesterday and I saw the movie for a second time, and so I was picking out those little things in there. Now, with respect to your question, which was, can you repeat it again?
Of course, absolutely. With respect to the question, so we're talking about successful colonization, and Èzili brought in a really awesome perspective of there's colonization where people are being used to continue the agenda of white supremacy, and some are aware of it and some are not, which is different than the coons that we talk about that Professor Kaba was talking about in terms of successful colonization. So there's levels and layers to this. But one of the questions that one of our viewers asked was, when we're talking about successful colonization, there's obviously a different level of colonization from the continent of Africa to the colonization of African Americans. And so the question that and I believe it was a sister, she says, why do you think the Africans on the continent don't support and offer support or help to the African American?
That's not true. My son went to Kenya and he spent I want to say 6 weeks. And before that, he went to Tanzania. It was around the same place, even though they're different countries. They were around the Serengeti. Spent 3 weeks there. Hello, attention shoppers. All right. When he went in the first day he gets there, They had a funeral because a baby had just died. He was there in Tanzania to put solar panels on health clinics.
Oh.
And when he got there, the people welcomed him. This is East Africa. They know that most of us come from West Africa, but they talked about that. I personally have, I can only speak for myself in this. I personally have reached out to, if I know a person is from the continent, I reach out to them. Mm-hmm. I ask them, a lot of times it's not necessarily the phenotype, but it's the way that people carry themselves. Most people from the continent and the Caribbean tend to walk erect. Whereas most Africans from that grew up here, they don't have that kind of mm-hmm. stature. There was a man in Oakland that used to come on the radio on the soul station KDIA, Lucky 1310. And his name was, when I first heard him, his name was Donald Warden. And then later on, he changed his name to Khalid Abdullah Tariq El Mansour. Mm. He was an attorney. He used to come on every Saturday, and then it changed to every Sunday. He had an organization called the Afro-American Association. And one of the things that he did, and I was a youth listening to the radio, is he said we should reach out to brothers and sisters from the continent. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we should. We should make places within our community that are safe havens for people that are relocating to the Americas. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we should have the same exchange. I just read this article, just preparing for this show, and I forget the brother that wrote it, but he was saying that what if we took our young people and they went to Africa for 6 months to learn, to have a cultural exchange, because young Jewish people do that when they go to Israel. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that that's a lie, that Africans don't like us. I mean, there's some people that's not going to like you regardless, right. But I think for the most part, Africans like us, want to get to know us better, but some of the things that we do is scary to them. And they say that when people come into this country, they tell them, hey, don't bother with those people. They say when Asians come in, don't bother those people. But when I meet a Nigerian, I ask them, are you an Igbo man or Yoruba man? And they're surprised that I even know that. Mm. And if they say Igbo, I say Kedu, and they say Odema. If I meet a person from Ghana, and they it's just something about them that looks like they're from the continent, and I asked them, where are you from? They say Ghana. I might say, Wahotesane. And the response is Mehoye. When I meet a person from Kenya, I learned this from a Kenyan. We were taking a Kiswahili class in Kaba. You probably know this phrase, or familiar with this phrase, is Umzungu, Urudi, Ulaya, Mo Africa, Aparti, Uhuru. And that is the acronym for Mau Mau. Mm. And what that means is Mzungu is a Kiswahili word for white man. What it's saying is Umzungu, Urudi, Ulaya, Mo Africa, Aparti, Uhuru. And what that means is when Europeans, when the white man goes back to Europe, Africans gain independence. Mm. And every time I say that to a Kenyan, they almost hug me and kiss me. Mm. And so I think it behooves us to reach out to them And I think it behooves them to reach out to us. And many of them are doing that. If you go Ghana, I understand you can get dual citizenship. There's so many places that we can help. I know a person that is working in Malawi to bring solar panels and healthcare using different types of scientific discoveries. There are people that I know personally that I have to say, that's not true. But my son, my oldest son, again, he has a friend from the Cameroon, and when they were going to Howard, that friend from the Cameroon wasn't interested in people who just wanted to, stomp or, pledge in fraternities or party. He was interested in people who were trying to keep high grades, trying to better themselves. And sometimes we as African Americans don't present our best face to the world. And so until they get to know us, they're kind of standoffish. But if you reach out to them, I find a lot of times they'll reach out to you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Minister. Dr. Imhotep, your thoughts?
Ask me the question first, please.
Okay. Well, the thought is, do you believe or feel, in terms of the question, that the viewer said that why don't Africans support African Americans more? Do you feel that that is true? Do you feel that that might be as a result of the colonizers trying to create that wedge between the African and the African American? What are your thoughts? I remember specifically working with a writer in Ghana, and I sent him a YouTube video to view, and interestingly enough, it would not play and open in Africa. So there is a deliberate, systemic, and ongoing filter coming, I believe, both ways, but more so there than here. When there are certain things that on the continent that they're not able to get access to or to view just on YouTube alone, which I thought was fascinating and interesting. So anyway, so the question would be, do you think that the African on the continent does not support African Americans, or is it something else?
Well, your second point, do the Eurasians, what they're doing to putting one segment of Africa against the other, and it behooves them to do that. I mean, that is their role on this planet. That is what they have to do to survive. Because, well, we won't get into that. But as far as Africans, there are African Americans here in the United States who are the head scratchers and the ones who are the Sambos, as my brilliant brother spoke about in the beginning. So you're going to have all types of people from all types of all walks of life in Africa or any other place who one's going to be on one side of the spectrum and the other side of the spectrum. Now, one thing that I particularly saw when I was in Burkina Faso and also went to Togo, I was studying with the Dogons about 3 years ago. I saw, when I went in 4 or 5 homes, I saw in Africa, our mother, I saw pictures of white Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes, and it blew my mind. Joy
DeGruy said the same thing. She said it broke her heart.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Here, last year at the Igbo conference, the Igbos come over here every year to forget this little town up in northern Virginia, and They have a little beautiful dance and conference and different things. And they have now, the Igbo have put away and pushed aside their original religion, and they have embraced Christianity. And on the arms, the robes of their chiefs, it has a Hebrew Star of David. I couldn't believe it. And then African dances, and they're doing all the different things that they've always done, but they have now gone a separate way. I couldn't believe that. So
successful colonization. Wow.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as far as separating us, of course they want to separate us, because what? United we stand, divided we fall. They want to divide us. Okay. The Africans against the Black Americans, the light-skinned African Americans against the dark-skinned Africans.
Colorism.
They want all of the rich women against the poor. They want to keep this thing going, so it separates us and does not unite us. But people, human beings on this planet, need to have take a second look and look inside themselves and see what is really happening. What are they really seeing on television and reading about newspapers? Are these things true, or is it a undivine plan to do what is coming? And
I appreciate it. Wow, that's incredible. I'm gonna ask the last question, and connected with this concept of. Well, not a concept, this agenda of successful colonization. And you brought up a great point, Dr. David Imhotep. I remember having a conversation with Dr. Joy DeGruy, and she said one of the things that broke her heart is when she went to Africa, she saw so many Africans bowing to a white Jesus in Christianity. And the question is, in terms of successful colonization, can it be possible that many a pocket of the African Americans, that such as ourselves, can we be more woke in America than our brothers and sisters on the continent? Professor Kabahia Wasakamane, if you could speak to us about what does it take to become, or what do we need to engage in to decolonize ourselves, to decolonize our minds, because that's where it starts first, before we can take any type of action. How do you decolonize yourself from a colonized Wakanda?
When your creator does not look like you, and you can find comfort in honoring a creator that doesn't look like you.
Come on now.
Well,
Then there's nothing else to be said. Everybody, because I believe that Minister Al-Kabelan already brought us to church by, well.
Can I get an amen?
This is what Dr. Clark taught us.
Absolutely.
Dr. Clark taught us that when someone can make your God ugly and their God beautiful,
yes,
and you can believe that,
yes,
then you never have to worry about that person,
right?
Because their mind will follow their spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very bitter pill.
Mm-hmm.
And I always attempt to give our people a little bit of honey to swallow before I give them that pill. But the bottom line is, going back to the revolution in Haiti, I think that demonstrates that when you cast aside their white God and embrace your African spirituality, you are free. And one of the bitterest pills that we have is the image of someone that don't look like us. That we will, because wouldn't it make sense that if your God is white, wouldn't it be obvious that you would honor white people that look like that God?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If little children go into a chapel or into a church where they see a white God on the wall, wouldn't it make sense that white people would be welcome to come into the community and do whatever it was that they wanted to do? There is a brother.
It's happening in Haiti right now.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's happening all around the world.
I mean, around all the countries, but I'm going to have Èzili come in on this one. But yeah, go ahead, Professor.
It's happening in our communities here in the United States.
Yeah.
It's happening wherever it is that's going on. And what is so interesting is that those images don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
The original symbols of our spirituality, and it really wasn't even symbols of a person. It really wasn't an anthropomorphic image of a creator. The anthropomorphic or the humanization of it was only for us to be able, for our human minds to be able to attach to the nature,
right,
to the orisha. However it was that we attached ourselves. Human-wise, it was to see that within the bird, the creator had given it great eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
In the cat, great agility. In the dog, great smell. Mm-hmm. So that it is a way of life. It's not a person.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be judged by the way in which you conduct yourself. And one of the reasons why I'm looking at this development of the book that I'm writing, Spirituality Before Religions, is to basically just have a discussion. The book that I'm writing is for our community. It is not to be given to any organization, academic or religious, or I'm not writing it for people to like it. I'm just offering us a way to think about our spirituality, to go deep inside of ourselves, to understand who we are as a people and how great we are.
Mm-hmm.
That even in the pain of our experience, there is the celebration that we're still here, able to have this conversation. Every day that Black people live, white folk die.
Mm-hmm.
Because they built their life on our death.
Mm.
So every day that we stay alive is one day that they die. And so this is why what we're doing is so phenomenally important. They're not that great. They are not who they pretend to be, and they are not that image. They are like the Wizard of Oz,
mm-hmm.
who projected a very large image on the wall, but in fact was a really very small man and could not do the things that everybody thought he could do.
Mm-hmm.
And that at the end, the Scarecrow had a brain, the Tin Man had a heart, the Lion had courage, and all Dorothy had to do was click her heels 3 times to say, I want to go home. We all have everything we need. Nobody outside of us can do anything. And this is what Dr. Clark told me.
Mm-hmm.
My first lesson from Dr. Clark, 12 and a half years old, sitting up in Harlem. The same people that would bring me to Black Panther party meetings were the same people that brought me to sit before Professor Clark. And Professor Clark, at the end, there was about 5 or 6 young people that they had brought up somewhere in Harlem, don't remember. And he was giving a presentation, and we all were sitting around him in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, they brought us up to meet him. And when he came to me, well, first of all, what he told all of us as young people, which I think is important, he said, I want you to go home and I want you to look in the mirror. And I want you to say to the person that you're looking at, I love you. And mean it. Because if you can't do that, there's nothing anyone else can do for you. When we can do that as a people, and you see, my children used to laugh because they used to always go around in the bathroom to watch me and I would emphasize it even more, knowing that they were watching me. I would throw kisses at myself.
Step back, want to kiss myself.
That's it. James Brown came home. And I would say, I love you. Because I wanted my children to get a sense of that. And I wanted all children, and all of the children I've come in contact with, But you got to mean it, not just say it. You got to
Sure.
mean it. You got to love your complexion. You got to love the size of your lips, the texture of your hair, the width of your nose. Because the creator of all don't make mistakes. And too many of our children. And just to go back to the point that you made before, if I can just say this about Africans that come to the country. In South Central Bronx, where I taught for 31 years, I started teaching there in 1979. And I stopped in 2009. And I watched a complete population change. The majority Spanish-speaking population in South Central Bronx, when I started teaching, was from Puerto Rico. When I ended my career, the largest Spanish-speaking community was from República Dominicana, the Dominican Republic. There was large movement of Africans into the Bronx. So that not only brought large populations of African peoples from the continent, but it also made a spiritual change because many of them were Muslim. And so parent-teacher night, my interaction with them when I was an administrator, we got along very well. And I would have the children, and it goes back to what Minister Al-Kabelan is saying. I would have them go home and I would say, I want you, because in my class, I would have maybe a couple of students from Nigeria. I might have some students from Ghana. I might have some students from Guinea-Bissau. I mean, there was about 10 different groups, what we call countries. I'm afraid of that. But basically 10 countries that would be maybe in one of my classes. And so what I would do is I would have them go home and I would ask them to ask their family about music, about storytelling. I would have them, like if open school night came, I would ask the father, because when they would come, what was interesting, and this had a lot of problem with a lot of the European American female teachers had a problem. Because by tradition, whether we agree with it or not, is not our business to get into other people's stuff. The man was the one that talked. The father talked. The male talked while the mother sat behind the father with the children. Now, when you're dealing with women of European descent, they would ask a question. They would want to defy the father and ask the mother a question. And that created a lot of cultural situations that they didn't understand. Whether we agree with it or not is not the point. The point is that this was the culture that they came to the community with. This was the culture that they came to the school with. So there was a lot of cultural things that were going on. The point I'm making is that I would have them go home and ask their parents to write out 10 words. Hello, goodbye, Mr., Ms., please, thank you, school, teacher. That would be their homework assignment. Whatever language, whether Igbo, Yoruba, Akan, speaking Twi, wherever it was. And I would extend myself out. If I saw a father come in, knew they were Muslim, I would address Assalamu alaikum. Because that language is the doorway to culture.
Right.
You know, if a Spanish-speaking parent came in, you know, I would say, bienvenidos, siéntase por favor. Because that would invite, language opens up a way for us to be able to start, at least initiate. That might be the only word you know in the language. But just that warms up the relationship between us as a people to be able to start the dialogue with each other. So I don't accept the fact that we can't get along. Because wherever Africans are, Africa is, and wherever Africa is, I am home. Okay. And we have to start looking at each other differently. We have to take control over our own relationship. And no matter if you are going to those exit interviews before you leave your home country, and you come in, they say, don't mess around with them African Americans. I'm going to rise above the occasion in order to extend a courtesy to you, to let you know that you are my brother.
Mm-hmm.
There are people living in my building here
Mm-hmm.
who are from the continent. We extend ourselves to them,
Mm-hmm.
and we speak to them. We rise above what people say. We are iconoclasts. We break the icon. We define for ourselves who it is. And of course, as our brother said, sometimes human beings get on each other's nerves. So it don't make a difference where you from. You just on my damn nerve. I don't like you. It ain't got nothing to do with where you from. You just a pain. That's it. And I know I could be that way to somebody too. So I'm not saying it's just one-sided.
Right.
We have to change this.
Right.
We have to make this happen for our children.
Yeah.
We have to show them. There was and then I'm going to finish this. There was a gentleman that had a family in the building where I live, and his son was fascinated with some of my clothing. And he would ask me, he's about 10 years old. He'd ask me questions, and I would talk to him. And also, one day his father got on the elevator with him, and the son started talking to me, and the father pulled him back, and then he stopped talking, and then he explained to me some of the things that go on. Some people get into it, some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
But you rise above it, because afterwards the father and I got along. I address the father, I respect the father. You break the ice and you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with all of our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. Same exact thing. And if they don't know our history, then spend some time and drop some knowledge on them about what we've done here in America as African people. We have to begin somewhere. So we have to somebody has to be strong enough to go beyond just what everybody's saying about us.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Professor. Èzili, last question. Decolonization tips, tricks, and techniques. How do we, or what do we do to begin our own self-decolonization, individually and or collectively?
Well, what everyone has been saying, obviously, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, understanding who you are, understanding who we are, understanding how big the galaxy is. I mean, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet, and then we have a galaxy that has 2,000 Earth-like planets, and we have evidence from the Dogon on to that we didn't just come from this space. I think we need to open ourselves up to more than Egypt. I see that I'm always teaching this idea that Ante Diop, he won the argument. He won the argument 50 years ago that the Egyptians were originally Black. And we don't have to keep having that argument.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I've learned so much in West Africa, in the Congo, and specifically, of course, when we talk about these millions of years that sentient beings have been on this planet. Remember, it was all one at one point. And so when I talk about Haiti, we were connected to the Yucatan. If we want to associate some of this with fantasy, I think the golden jaguar is connected to the Olmecs. So I think we can use everything as a tool to decolonization. Understand that there is going to be, because of the economic success of this movie, lots of spin-offs. For me, it's about where you stand. I want to make a point about this. They use a heart-shaped herb to get to the ancestral realm. I was very fascinated by that, because that's it's the Sacred Heart of the Divine Mother, obviously. It's the Veve of Èzili Dantò. So the heart-shaped herb got you to the ancestral aim, to source. So what is source? You know, we were talking about the divide and conquer, which is a template of colonialism. But I actually sort of see a vibrational energy that's moving right now. If we go back to the Panthers, I think that there was a destruction of black fire, the Pétwol energy, with what the COINTEL program did to Fred Hampton. And I think something died right there. And that something then was replaced with the destruction of something that's very soulful to us, music and images. And now we have different images coming up. We have Colin Kaepernick and his big afro. We have Wakanda and the people's connection to N'Jaka, which is actually, you know, a representation of Oakland and the Black Panthers. What we do with that is really important. What do we do with it? We are agents of our own decolonization. So we can use anything as a tool for decolonization. I see the energy of, I think last year during the 50th anniversary, for last year, 2 years ago, we had Beyonce going and you know, dressing up like Panthers. So there's a movement moving towards the destruction of global white supremacy. And that movement is not like the former clients of mine, the last poet says, you know, the revolution will not be televised. It is live. And it is us, right? Because, you know, Mauritania, there's still enslavement there. They're waiting for us. We are it. Okay. If you see it, then it is for you to do. And I think part of our problem is sometimes we don't understand how big we are. So there is a galaxy, and I am firmly of the belief that sometimes I feel left behind. That's a theme I think that was in the movie that I think that that hit us viscerally. Right?
It did.
A little bit, N'Jaka, left behind. I think there's something in us in the Western Hemisphere as diaspora that feel left behind, and it's almost a spiritual thing. So I'd like to leave by saying this: that Guinée posée, that means it doesn't matter how much physically you are chained. During the Haitian Revolution, during the time of our ancestors' greatest darkness, they would go inside and they would be whatever they wanted to be. And that was the psychology that freed us, right? Because they could be Èzili Dantò, Ogufuraï, Legba, while they were being raped. So if they could do that, how much more do we have? So really what it is this. You are free. Like I say all the time, this is free Haiti speaking. Even though right now in Haiti, we are so colonized. The coons and the black collaborators are in power. But I am free Haiti. I am the resistance. And I see the resistance, and I know the resistance has already won, because in our culture, we have something that says Guinée posée. That means all is calm in our soul, right? We've already accomplished. So once you understand that, you can go through the tribulations, but you must understand the divide and conquer that everyone was talking about. You must understand category 1 and category 0. I always say there's the colonist and then there's the black collaborator. I always go after the colonists. I leave the black collaborators because I know he would not have a job without the colonists. So I always go out for the deep pocket, and that's what I've done. So focus on focus, because there's so much distraction to take the currency of your attention. That's, if I could leave that with everyone, focus, all the folks that are watching us, just focus on your own liberation. And becoming the most perfect thing that you can be for you and your family. And if you do, and if we all do that, and we look outwards together, I think that you know, we are it. Like, everybody wants to be us. So
No doubt.
What else is there? You are it. You are already there. And then this is what we have to teach, like, what value is important, right? Is it the Egyptian outer edifices, or is it what you are inside? And I think I want to leave one fantasy for us. When I watched that movie, I was taught by elders that for every criticism, you've got to find an answer, right? So when I watched that movie, I kept thinking to myself, what would I have done to that movie? There was a point when the Death Squad person, the CIA guy, he seemed to me anyways, and maybe it's my mind, that he was in a hologram. And I thought to myself, oh, that would have been perfect. Put him in a hologram to do what he does best, which is kill. And then I thought about it, and I said, you know what? That should have been the movie. That Wakanda and N'Jaka, the Black Panther, and his cousin should have got together, used their vibranium to put all these warmongers in a hologram and let them make it think that they're actually killing people, but it's really a hologram, and we can go on. The humans can go on and create a new world. So
I like that.
That's my fantasy.
I like that. Now, if we see that next year, 2 years or whatever, somebody gonna get some money, because I know you're an attorney. You're gonna go after Marvel if that's the case. I know that's for a fact.
That's my fantasy.
And it's because it was on my show, I want 15%.
Let them do what they do best. But
I changed my mind. I want Èzili in lieu of Alexa. I had Kaba earlier. I want Èzili. It's like, wake up every day. Èzili, tell us about Haiti. Tell us about colonization and decolonization. Thank you very much. Absolutely amazing. I love you so much. You're amazing. Thank you for
having me. Thank you.
Dr. David Imhotep, decolonization, tips, tricks, techniques, concepts, your thoughts.
Decolonization. This is a serious, gigantic question. How do we do that? How do we approach that? How do we live through it? Well, they're on their last leg. They're on their last leg in so many different ways. Their greed is what will destabilize them and will take them down. So as was said before, all we have to do is sit back and make it through these hard times and watch them come down to where they're supposed to be and us go up to where we're supposed to be. So when you talk about decolonization and all of these negative things, everything must pass. Everything must pass. Everything comes up and comes down. We were on the top in the beginning. Now we're on the bottom. We'll be on the top again. So as far as decolonization and the worries about that, it's not going to be here forever. It's a thing that is going to be a glitch in the whole cosmos. Mm-hmm. It's going to pass as everything else does. So I look at the future as it's going to be dark first, but then the light is going to come. So everyone hang in there, keep your health together, eat right, treat people correctly, smile, help those who need help, and keep a smile on your face.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Dr. David Imhotep. Minister Imhotep Al-Kabalan, your thoughts on decolonization, tips, tricks, techniques, concepts, ideas, please share.
It's happening all the time. Decolonization was happening during the time of Hannibal. Mm-hmm. Decolonization is happening in the time of Taharqa, Pianki, Shabaka is happening in the time of Boukman, Dessalane, Christophe, Louverture. Is happening with Bobby, Huey, John Huggins, Angela Davis. My son, my youngest son, is reading a book by Angela Davis now. He just graduated from Cal Poly, and so now he could read what he wants to read. so he's reading that. This program is a decolonization. Queen Mother Mary Moore came to Wose in 1982. She had just suffered a stroke. She was traveling with a companion, but one of the things that she reiterated to us was that we need to be denegroized. And I think it behooves us all that are within the sound of my voice to work on a denegroizing, Ray.
Yes, sir.
And do a drive-by. do a drive-by. Go to where is that? What's that place in Gorée Island where they have the slave dungeons, but they still have white Jesus there? You know that's a contradiction. I knew a lady in our church. She had asthma. She had a cigarette in one hand and an atomizer in the other. You know, we do it. I listen to and read a lot of Amos Wilson, and he said we're not Africans. He said we are possessed by spirits and demons, and when we speak, it is not with our African voice. It is with the voice of that demonic presence that uses our lips to speak its own language. So I think the Black Panther is going to help in terms of African dress. It's going to be a fad, but it might be here for a while. We're going to see more people. It might turn into a trend. It might. We're going to see more people wearing batakaris and dashikis. We're going to see people using the African language even more. Do you not know that the language that they were using in the Black Panther, Xhosa, is like the oldest language. Those clicks, that's the oldest language. You know, you're going to see more people use African language. You're going to see people appreciating sisters a little bit more. You're going to see sisters appreciating their natural features more by virtue of the fact that these sisters are so prominent on the screen. And I was listening to D.L. Hughley, and he talked about how movies change our perception. He was talking about New Jack City and yes. What's that movie with Al Pacino? Yes. For me, Godfather. And some of you may be a little bit older, around my age. For me, the Mac and Superfly is what killed a lot of people. People always ask what happened to the 60s. It was the 70s. Right. You know, and so we need to make it an effort. One of the last songs, I think the song that Bob Marley was going to come out before he died, was a song called Babylon Feel This One. Babylon, feel this one when you take care of your kids. Babylon, feel this one when you love your Black wife. Babylon, feel this one when you take an office, because it's people that sacrifice to get to that office. Babylon, feel this one. You know, when we create our own banks and credit unions. Babylon, feel this one every time you watch the Philippe Shock Matthews show. There you go. Shock. Rastafari.
you know I love you guys, and I paid him money for that, family. I just want you to know that there was a check because his birthday is coming up. So I just I appreciate all of you. You Hey,
Philly, this show is a drum. This show is a drum.
Last thing. I think that we did leave a lot of brothers behind. So maybe the one thing that this can do is those Black Panther brothers that are still in jail. It's time for us to get together and get them out of there.
Yes. Ashe.
I want to end with when we talk about decolonization. I mentioned this, I think, on one of the previous Panther review shows, because I have noticed I'm very big on vibration and frequency, and one of the reasons why we launched Shock Metaphysics Virtual Comedic Wisdom School, and why all of you are part of it, is because you bring a vibration and a frequency to decolonize us naturally, if you will. But interestingly enough, my studies with Dr. William A. Smith, who is going to become an adept for the Shock Metaphysics Comedic Wisdom School, we're working with him to develop curriculum. He is the one who did the research and developed the term and the science of racial battle fatigue. And it's analogous to being bombarded daily from birth to death with micro and macro aggressions of the oppression of race and racism. And so I started looking at my own life and how am I assaulted every day? How have I been assaulted in my past? Dr. Nzinga Dalila talks about and gives us race-based traumatic stress and injury and violence. And I remember having a conversation, my first conversation, as a matter of fact, was Dr. Joy DeGruy. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I had her on the show. And I don't know if she talked about it on the show or maybe after the show in the green room, because in the green room, we talked for another 2 hours. But I asked her, I said, what do you do to inoculate and anesthetize yourself from white supremacy, from the work that you do where you have to be in proximity with them? And she says, I do this, and she says, I just have days where I have to have a whiteout. And I said, what the hell is a whiteout? She says, I just have to have days where I am just absolutely not around Europeans. Yeah, I thought that was brilliant, right? I thought that was brilliant. And so she'll go fishing. She'll tell you she'll go fishing and she'll get on a lake in a boat and she will just completely be, 100% Wakandian, if you will, and be in her African-centered thought. And so as I started studying racial battle fatigue and understanding our proximity, the literal continuous proximity of the European kills us. It gives us stress and kills us, particularly men, quicker than women. As our income levels increase, working around the European, our morbidity rate increases. And so I decided to undergo a test with myself, and this is a decolonization technique that I use. And I said, what would I do if I went a day, 2 days, 3 days, and I just kind of started trying to elongate it as much as possible, to not even listen to the European's voice and tenor. Because one of the things that I remember from talking to Professor Kaba when we first met is that there was a time when we had no neural net, we had no neural memory of how a European sounds. All we knew was the sound of Africa. All we knew was the sound of our own voices. All we knew was the sound of our language. And when we, similar to what Professor Kaba was saying about when you go over to the continent, there's a white Jesus up there. That image is the visual impact, but their voice is the auditory impact that reinitiates and triggers our colonization just by hearing their voice. And so I decided to cut off the sound, not listen to the television, radio, internet, and just be in an African-centered sound and state of mind in terms of decolonization. It's amazing how much we are triggered and inundated by white supremacy and the triggers of white supremacy, even if that white person or European person is not assaulting us physically and deliberately. It's the fact of the proximity that that the moment you hear their voice, their sound of their tenor is not a natural African sound. And so decolonizing is also learning how to anesthetize and inoculate yourself from European frequency and vibration. So I just want to leave the family with that. And that being said, Professor Kabahia Wathakamene, we love you and honor you, and we're going to see if we can get your voice on Alexa. and as Èzili Dantò, I'm going to see if I can get your voice on my Google. Dr. David Imhotep, I just want to have a beer with you, my brother. I just want to sit down with you and just have a cold one and just, you know, shoot the with you. And then of course my minister and good friend, Minister Imhotep Al-Kabalan, you are just a gem. You are just a treasure. You are a gift. You are such a gift. Walking encyclopedia of memories and knowledge of our history, of our people, of our family. I so am honored and blessed that when Professor Kaba came to Sacramento because of Terrence Taylor, shout out to my brother who brought Professor Kaba in and took us over to Wose Community Church, where you have been a minister now for about 30 years. And you're getting ready next week to celebrate your 60th year, Earth year on this planet. And I just, I can only imagine the lives of the people who have had the beautiful opportunity to be with you and to be ministered by you and loved by you for 30 years. It's just overwhelming, the contribution that you bring. And so that being said, part of decolonization family, I guess, is kind of listening to, watching, downloading the conversations on this show, because it's not just what these adepts say, it's the frequency and the vibration behind it. The frequency and vibration behind it is what we talk about in shock metaphysics as first frequency. These are the first Africans that they are channeling the vibration of the first frequency of the Africans that built those pyramids, that built civilization, that created it. And I'm blessed to be able to have conversations with them on a daily basis. But I am absolutely certain I'm more blessed by being able to bring them to you. And so part of your inoculation and anesthetization and anesthetizing of the European is to listen to these brothers and sisters that have dedicated their entire lives to you, to us. And so I thank you for that. All of you. I thank you so much for that.
And my brother Philippe, we also have to pay homage to you.
Yes. Here we go again.
Because if it wasn't for the work that you're doing, we would not be able to be with our family and our community on a night like this. And so I pay tribute to you, my brother, because if people hear us, it's because you're our loudspeaker. You are our microphone. And so it becomes important that you realize the role that we all play in this to make this possible for our family. This is a continuation of all of the great work that everyone that we honor and that we call names to, whoever they may be in our history. You are our microphone to allow us to do that intellectual, spiritual, and physical libation. It ain't over till we win. We're going to make this happen.
Yes, sir.
And it's just a matter of us keep on keeping on. And I just thank you, Brother Philippe, for giving us this opportunity to have this type of forum where we can talk to our community and help them understand. And I thank you for bringing us together in the Kemetic Wisdom School.
Yes. Yes.
To be able to organize this type of information to our community, to assist them in understanding what it is that they have to do, because it's not just about us. And I remember going to this conference that brought a lot of people, and it was called the Gathering of the Masters. And the key to the Gathering of the Masters is that it wasn't the Neely Fullers and the Francis Cress Welsings and the Phil Valentines and all the other great scholars that came who were the masters. It was the people that took time out of their schedule to come to the conference. And so I thank the people who are listening to us and who will join the Kemetic Wisdom School so that we can move forward with this. We owe it to our children and yet those unborn for this. What our ancestors did, when I think of what they did, what they were willing to do for us, we have no right not to continue their work. It's our sacred obligation to continue this work in their name, in our name, and in those names yet to come. So, Brother Philippe, I thank you, and I bless you, my brother, for all that you're doing. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Yes.
Ashe.
Yes. Ashe.
Thank you,
Ashe.
Philip.
Hotep family, you know what to do. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you share. And also YouTube has done a new thing. There's a little bell next to the subscribe button. Make sure you click on that bell, because that means that whenever we do a show, you will automatically get notified on your phone or your computer or whatever. It will send you a notification saying, hey, Philippe is talking to somebody important. He's got some frequency for you that you need to have. So make sure you tick that bell next to the subscribe button. And we'll see you guys next time on the Philippe Matthews Show Live. Take care, family.